Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Peria.
And I'm Peely Burkett.
This is the first in a series of three videos that will get you oriented and ready to use the Equity Storytelling Guide. Peely and I have been educators for over 30 collective years and equity facilitators for maybe 7 or 8 by now, and partners in crime on this project for about a year. After gathering feedback and early insights in fall 2025 from other equity facilitators, the language and culture team, the internal PED equity team, a group of pilot LEAs and LEAs at the December statewide meeting, we're really excited to share this with a broader audience. In this first video, we want to build a shared understanding of how storytelling can support equity work as a reflective and learning practice, and explore how the Equity Storytelling Guide might fit into your council's context, capacity, and goals in the coming months.
We're honored at the chance to work on this project and share our work thus far with you. We've tried to approach this from the beginning with a lot of intentionality, empathy, and a deep rooting in our school-based experiences. Thanks in advance to our equity facilitator colleagues and the PED team for their support on this project.
So, storytelling isn't a soft add on. It's how human brains are wired to learn, remember, and make meaning long before spreadsheets, charts, or tables existed. Neuroscience research shows that when we hear a story, multiple regions of the brain light up all at once. Regions related to language, emotion, movement, and prediction, which helps us to hold complexity rather than reduce it. What's really cool, we think, is that as stories unfold, listeners' brains actually begin to synchronize with the storytellers. So if you're scanning the brain of a storyteller and the brain of a listener over the course of the story, the way that their brains are lighting up will actually become basically the same. And that shows in a very real visual way how storytelling can build shared understanding, empathy, and perspective across difference. And this matters because equity work is inherently complex and unfinished. Story allows us to engage with tension, engage with multiple truths and lived experience without oversimplifying. And so the Equity Storytelling Guide helps to capture not just what changed, but how people experience that change and what the human impact behind the data is. And so, like equity work itself, using this guide isn't about perfect stories, it's about building shared narrative over time that shapes memory, understanding, and equitable change.
Of course, Indigenous peoples and communities have understood this long before brain science caught up. Indigenous communities have used story as instruction to share wisdom across generations and as a way to stay connected and heal. In families, in cultures across the globe and across New Mexico, story is how knowledge, values, history, and responsibility are passed down. This matters for equity work because equity is shaped by culture and identity, by what people inherit, their lived experiences, and what they choose to carry forward. Stories carry values. They shape what gets remembered, what gets normalized, and also what gets left out. When we tell and collect stories, we're making intentional choices about meaning. Equity work is deeply relational. It doesn't just live in individuals and isolated outcomes, it lives in relationships between people, systems, and time. Story is one of the ways that these relationships can become visible. Continuity is key here as well. Stories don't end when a grant cycle closes or when a school year wraps up. They influence what comes next, how people understand progress, harm, and possibility.
So, the Equity Storytelling Guide is designed intentionally in this lineage. It's not about extracting clean, polished narratives or proving success. So, to encapsulate things a bit, this guide exists because a lot of equity work is happening, but may not always show up immediately in the data. The ESG is not about compliance, it's about sense making. You can think of this as a container for reflection and learning over time. All stories reflect the identities, relationships, and beliefs of the people they come from. And so, how a story is told, or whether it's told as at all, sometimes matters as much as the context. So, this guide is about honoring stories in progress, holding experience and complexity together, and recognizing that storytelling is a part of the work, not just something we do after the work is done. And while data undoubtedly answers very important questions, it usually does so after something has already happened. Stories let us capture learning while the work is unfolding, while still connecting quantitative and qualitative data points. They help explain why a strategy worked in one context and not another. They surface unintended consequences, tensions, and trade offs that metrics often miss and can often hide. Stories also humanize equity work, especially when engaging with students, families, boards, or community partners.
So you do not need to be a strong writer, facilitator, or storyteller to use the equity storytelling guide. The structure you'll see in the next video does a lot of the heavy lifting in each template while also inviting a lot of customization. And this was really intentional. Hannah and I wanted to design these templates with a lot of flexibility in mind so that it can adapt to your capacity and not demand more of you or of your teams. So far, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from everyone who's seen the tool or heard about it at the December statewide meeting. And some of the insights we've gleaned from our pilot partners are their intended use with student equity councils, being able to share stories with their governing councils to guide advisements in more visible ways, to serve as inspiration for public art projects or community workshops, and also extending into multimedia formats, which we're pretty excited about. The mileage on the equity storytelling guide can really vary school to school, council to council. Some equity councils might want to use it once a year. Some might want to revisit it more frequently. Some might use it during meetings, others asynchronously between meetings. Some of these stories might focus more on adult learning and changed behaviors, and others on student voice. And all of those uses are totally valid. There's not one right way to use the equity storytelling guide. It's not just for stories that have been completed. We also think there's a lot of value to use the storytelling guide to tell stories that are in progress so that you can more intentionally think about how you want these stories to wrap up for your students and for your communities. You're not expected to use every prompt or fill in every cell to produce a perfect artifact. You're also not expected to produce a perfect artifact at all. Really, stories are, like we said, meant to be flexible, meant to capture what's been done, capture what's living for you, as well as the values of your school and your communities. As we close, we want to come back to three simple ideas that have been underneath everything we've discussed: memory, responsibility, and possibility. Let's start with memory. A lot of equity work happens quietly in meetings, in relationships, in classrooms with the doors closed, after contract hours, and in moments that never make it into a spreadsheet. Stories help us remember that work, not just that it happened, but how it unfolded and what it felt like along the way.
Once a story is told or held, it asks something of us. Responsibility doesn't mean having the perfect answer or solution, but it means listening with care, noticing patterns, and being honest about what we're learning as we go. Once we name a gap and identify that something could make things better, we have a responsibility to act in accordance. And possibility, stories don't just document the past, they inform what we are able to imagine is possible next. They help us see where conditions shifted or trust grew, where a small change maybe unlocks something bigger, and where we need to still pay attention. So, the equity storytelling guide, we hope, isn't asking you to add more work. It's inviting you to notice the work that you're already doing and to learn from it together. We thank you for showing up with curiosity, for your honesty, and all of the conversations your equity councils are having, and for the care that you bring to equity work across the state. We're excited to keep learning alongside you in the months ahead.